She stood outside the tall glass building, her reflection staring back at her like someone she barely recognized anymore. 2 years ago, she had been softer, lighter, someone who believed life would somehow figure itself out. Now, there was a quiet strength in her eyes, but it came with a weight that never really left her chest. The morning air was cool, yet her palms were warm and slightly damp as she tightened her grip on the folder in her hands. Just one chance. She whispered to herself. That's all you need. Her name was Alina Brooks, and today was not just another interview. It was the kind of day that could change everything, or break what little she had managed to hold together. Rent was overdue, bills were piling up, and back in her small apartment, her 2-year-old daughter slept peacefully, unaware of how fragile their world really was. Alina took a deep breath and stepped forward. Inside, everything looked polished, expensive, almost unreal. The floors shone like mirrors, the walls carried soft neutral tones, and people moved with purpose, dressed in clothes that whispered wealth without trying too hard. She felt out of place instantly, like a stain on something perfect, but she pushed that feeling down. You belong here, she told herself, even though a part of her didn't believe it. At the reception desk, a woman greeted her with a professional smile. Good morning. How can I help you? I'm here for the personal assistant interview, Alina said, trying to keep her voice steady. Of course. Please take the elevator to the 35th floor. Alina nodded, thanked her, and walked toward the elevators. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of the job, but because of a feeling she couldn't explain. Something deep inside her stirred, like a memory trying to surface. The elevator doors closed, and as it began to rise, her reflection stared back at her again. For a moment, everything blurred, and her mind drifted to a night she had tried so hard to forget. It had been a birthday party. Loud music, dim lights, laughter everywhere. She almost hadn't gone, but her friend insisted. That night felt like a different life, different version of her. She remembered feeling nervous, out of place until she met him. He wasn't like the others. He didn't try too hard. He didn't speak loudly to impress anyone. He simply listened. His voice was calm, his eyes kind, and for the first time in a long while she felt seen. Not judged, not compared, just seen. One conversation turned into another. Laughter came easily. Time slipped away without warning, and before she knew it, they were alone, sharing a quiet moment that felt bigger than it should have been. She had never planned for what happened next. It wasn't reckless. It wasn't forced. It was something softer, something that felt right in the moment, even if it didn't make sense later. She gave herself to him that night, not out of pressure but out of trust. And then the morning came. He was gone. No note, no number, no explanation. Just an empty space where something important had been. The elevator dinged, pulling her back to reality. Alina stepped out, her heart beating faster now. The hallway was quiet, almost too quiet, with large windows that overlooked the city below. Everything felt controlled, calm, like nothing bad could ever happen here. But she knew better. She walked toward the office door, her heels clicking softly against the floor. When she reached it, she paused, her hand hovering in the air for just a second. Focus, she whispered. She knocked. Come in, a voice replied. The moment she opened the door, the world shifted. Time didn't stop, but it slowed just enough for everything to feel unreal. Behind the large desk sat a man dressed in a dark suit, his posture relaxed but powerful. He looked up from his work, and the second his eyes met hers, something changed in his expression. Recognition. Shock. Something deeper. Alina's breath caught in her throat. Her body froze, her fingers tightening around her folder. No, it couldn't be, but it was. Him. The same eyes. The same face. The same quiet intensity that had stayed in her memory for 2 years. He stood up slowly, as if unsure whether she was real or not. Alina, he said, her name leaving his lips like something fragile. Her heart slammed against her chest. He remembered. Of course he remembered. How could he not? But she wasn't ready for this. Not here. Not now. She forced herself to move, stepping forward just enough to maintain distance. Her voice, when it came out, was controlled, almost too controlled. Good morning, sir. I'm here for the interview. The word sir hung in the air between them like a wall she desperately needed. He blinked, as if trying to process her response. "Sir?" he repeated softly, almost in disbelief. "This is a professional setting," she said quickly. "I'd like to keep it that way." For a moment he just looked at her, really looked at her, and she knew what he saw. Not the girl from that night. Someone different. Someone stronger. Someone tired. "Please," he said finally, gesturing toward the chair. "Set." She sat down carefully, placing her folder on her lap to hide the slight tremble in her hands. He didn't sit immediately. Instead, he walked around the desk slowly, like he was afraid any sudden movement might break the moment. "I searched for you," he said quietly. Her chest tightened. She hadn't expected that, but she couldn't let herself react. "I'm here for the job," she replied, keeping her eyes down. "Nothing else matters right now." Silence filled the room. Then he returned to his seat, opening her file. "You have experience," he said after a moment. "Administrative work, customer service." "Yes," she nodded. "You're qualified." "Thank you." But he wasn't really looking at the file anymore. He was looking at her. "Where did you go?" he asked. Her fingers tightened slightly. That question carried too much weight. "Life happened," she said simply. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Do you have responsibilities?" he asked carefully. Her heart skipped. That word. "Responsibilities," she tittered. "Just for a second." But he noticed. "Yes," she said quietly. "What kind?" She swallowed. "One," she replied. "A child," she nodded. "Yes." Something shifted in his expression. Not judgment. Not disappointment. Something else. Something she couldn't fully read. But she didn't have time to think about it. She couldn't let herself. "You won't have any issues with work performance," she added quickly. "I can handle both." "I didn't say you couldn't," he replied softly. Another silence. Then, without another word, he picked up a pen and signed something on her file. "You're hired." Her head snapped up. Just like that. He gave a small, almost tired smile. Just like that. Relief flooded her, but it came mixed with something else. Fear, confusion, uncertainty. "Thank you," she said, standing up quickly. She turned toward the door, ready to leave before anything else could happen. "Alina." She stopped, her back still facing him. "I'm glad you came today," he said. Her throat tightened. But she didn't turn around. She just nodded and walked out. The door closed behind her, and only then did she allow herself to breathe. But she didn't know that inside the office, he stood there, staring at the door long after she left. And for the first time in 2 years, a question he had buried deep inside himself came back stronger than ever. What really happened after that night? And why did it feel like the answer was standing right in front of him, hiding everything? Alina barely remembered how she made it out of the building that day. Her legs carried her forward, but her mind was still trapped in that office. In that moment when their eyes met and everything she had buried for 2 years came rushing back like a storm, she could no longer hold back. The city moved around her like usual, people walking, cars passing, voices blending into noise, but for her everything felt distant, like she was watching life from the outside. She reached the bus stop and sat down slowly, her hand still clutching her folder, even though the interview was already over. She had the job. That should have been enough to calm her, to give her relief, but instead, her heart felt heavier. Because now she had to face him every day. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to steady herself, but her thoughts betrayed her again. His voice, the way he said her name, the way he looked at her like she was something he had lost. She shook her head quickly, as if trying to physically push the memories away. "No," she whispered under her breath. "You don't get to think like that anymore." Her life was different now. She had someone depending on her, and she couldn't afford to let emotions ruin everything she had struggled to build. When she finally reached home, the familiar sight of her small apartment brought a sense of grounding. The paint on the walls was slightly worn, the furniture simple, but it was hers. It was safe. The moment she stepped inside, a tiny voice broke through her thoughts. "Mama!" She looked up just in time to see her daughter, Lily, wobbling toward her with tiny, excited steps. Alina dropped her bag instantly and knelt down, opening her arms wide. "My baby," she whispered as Lily crashed into her embrace. Lily's small arms wrapped tightly around her neck, her soft giggles filling the room. In that moment, everything else faded away. The fear, the confusion, the past, none of it mattered. "You missed me?" Alina asked softly, brushing her fingers through Lily's curly hair. Lily nodded seriously. "Miss Mama." Alina smiled, her eyes softening. "I missed you too." From the corner of the room, her neighbor, Mrs. Carter, watched with a gentle smile. "She's been asking about you all day," she said. "Did the interview go well?" Alina stood up slowly, still holding Lily against her chest. "I got the job. That's wonderful." Mrs. Carter clapped her hands lightly. "I knew you would." Alina smiled, but it didn't fully reach her eyes. There was so much more she wanted to say. So much she couldn't say. "Thank you for watching her," she added quietly. "Anytime," Mrs. Carter replied. "You just focus on building a better future for that little one." Alina nodded, her grip on Lily tightening slightly. A better future. That was all she wanted. That was all she had ever wanted. But now, the past had found her again. And it wasn't going to stay quiet this time. That night, after putting Lily to sleep, Alina sat alone on her bed, staring at the ceiling. The room was silent except for the soft sound of her daughter's breathing. Normally, that sound comforted her, but tonight her thoughts were too loud. She replayed everything. His reaction, his questions, the way his eyes changed when she mentioned a child. Her chest tightened. Did he suspect something? No, he couldn't. There was no way. She had been careful. She had said as little as possible. But still, something about the way he looked at her made her uneasy. As if he could see through her. As if he already knew. She turned onto her side, pulling the blanket closer around her. What if he finds out? She whispered into the darkness. The question had haunted her for 2 years, but now it felt closer, more real. What if he asked for proof? What if he demanded a test? What if he decided to take Lily away from her? Her breathing quickened slightly. "No," she said firmly, sitting up. "That won't happen." She wouldn't let it happen. She had raised Lily alone. She had fought through every struggle. She had sacrificed everything. No one was going to take her child away. Not even him. The next morning came too quickly. Alina woke up before sunrise, her body already tense with anticipation. Today was her first day at work, and unlike any other job she had ever had, this one came with complications she couldn't ignore. She got ready quietly, careful not to wake Lily too soon. But as she was tying her hair, a small voice spoke from behind her. "Mama go." She turned and smiled softly. "Yes, baby. Mama has to go to work." Lily rubbed her sleepy eyes. "Come back." "Always," Alina said gently, kneeling down in front of her. "I always come back." She kissed her forehead and held her for a moment longer than usual, as if trying to gather strength from that small, innocent presence. After dropping Lily off with Mrs. Carter, Alina made her way back to the same building, the same glass tower that now felt less like an opportunity and more like a test. As she entered, everything felt sharper, more intense, because now she knew who was waiting upstairs. The elevator ride felt longer this time, heavier. When the doors finally opened, she stepped out and walked toward her desk, which was placed just outside his office. The HR manager greeted her briefly and explained her tasks, but Alina barely needed the instructions. She had done similar work before. What she hadn't done before was work this close to someone who could change her life completely. She sat down, organizing files, checking schedules, focusing on anything that could keep her mind busy. For a while it worked, until she heard his voice. "Alina?" Her heart skipped. She stood up immediately and walked into his office. He was sitting behind his desk, looking as composed as ever, but there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. Something more focused, more aware. "I need you to review my schedule," he said. "Cancel anything non-essential this week." "Yes, sir," she replied, keeping her tone professional. She wrote everything down quickly, avoiding eye contact as much as possible. But she could feel his gaze on her, studying her. "Are you comfortable here?" he asked suddenly. She looked up, slightly surprised. "Yes," she said. "Everything is fine," he nodded slowly. "If anything comes up, especially with your child, you can let me know." Her chest tightened. I can manage, she replied quickly. I didn't say you couldn't, he said again, his voice softer this time. A brief silence passed between them. Then she turned to leave. You've changed, he said quietly. She froze for a second, but didn't turn around. People do, she replied. And then she walked out. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of tasks and responsibilities. Alina worked efficiently, keeping everything organized, making sure there were no mistakes. She needed to prove herself. She needed to keep this job. Around midday, her phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen. Mrs. Carter. A sudden wave of fear hit her. She answered immediately. Hello. Alina, Mrs. Carter's voice sounded worried. Lily isn't feeling well. Her heart dropped. What happened? She has a fever. It's getting high. Alina stood up so fast her chair nearly fell over. I'm coming, she said quickly. She didn't even think twice. She rushed toward his office and knocked. Come in. She stepped inside, her face pale. I'm sorry, sir, she said, her voice slightly shaking. My daughter is sick. I need to go. He didn't hesitate. Go, he said immediately. Relief flooded her. Thank you, she whispered before turning and rushing out. But as she left, he stood there, watching her go, something heavy settling in his chest. Something that didn't feel like simple concern anymore. Something deeper, something personal. And for reasons he couldn't explain, he couldn't just sit there and ignore it. Alina rushed out of the building, her heart pounding louder with every step she took. Nothing else mattered in that moment except getting to Lily. The world blurred around her as she waved down a cab, her hands shaking slightly as she gave the driver the address. Please, as fast as you can, she said, her voice tight with urgency. The ride felt endless. Every second stretched painfully, filled with thoughts she couldn't control. Was the fever too high? Had she waited too long? What if something serious was wrong? Her chest tightened. And she pressed her hand against it, trying to breathe through the fear. Stay strong, she whispered to herself. She needs you. When the car finally stopped, she didn't even wait properly. She paid quickly and rushed out, almost running toward the small clinic at the corner where Mrs. Carter had taken Lily. The smell of antiseptic hit her the moment she stepped inside. The waiting area was crowded, children crying softly, parents whispering anxiously. It was a place filled with worry, and now she was part of it. Mama! She turned at the sound and saw Lily sitting weakly in Mrs. Carter's arms. Her face was flushed, her small body limp in a way that made Alina's heart ache instantly. My baby, she breathed, rushing over and taking her into her arms. Lily leaned against her, her tiny fingers gripping her blouse. Mama hurt, she murmured. I'm here, Alina whispered, holding her tighter. Mama's here. You're okay. Mrs. Carter looked relieved. The doctor said it's a high fever. They're going to check her now. Alina nodded quickly, her throat tight. A nurse called them in shortly after, and Alina followed, carrying Lily carefully, as if even the smallest movement might hurt her. Inside the room, the doctor examined Lily calmly, checking her temperature, her throat, her breathing. It's an infection, the doctor said after a moment. Nothing too serious, but the fever is high. We'll give her an injection and medication. Relief flooded through Alina so strongly that her knees almost gave out. Thank you, she whispered. As the nurse prepared the injection, Alina sat down holding Lily close, rocking her gently. It's okay, she murmured. You're strong. My brave girl. Lily whimpered softly but didn't resist much. She was too tired. Alina kissed her forehead. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. In that moment, nothing else existed. Not the job, not the past, not him, just her child. But she didn't know that across the city, in a place far removed from this small clinic, someone else couldn't focus either. Back in his office, Daniel Hayes stood near the large window, his hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed on nothing in particular. He had tried to continue working after she left, tried to focus on meetings, reports, decisions. It kept going back to her. Her face, her voice, the fear in her eyes when she said her child was sick. He exhaled slowly. Why does this feel different? He muttered to himself. He had employees before, many of them, and yet, none of their problems had ever affected him like this. None of them had made him feel restless. uneasy, like something important was happening, and he wasn't part of it. He walked back to his desk, picked up a file, then put it down again. This was pointless. He wasn't going to get anything done. And deep down, he already knew why. He cared. More than he should. More than made sense. Before he could stop himself, he grabbed his keys. "I'll be back later," he told his assistant briefly. "Everything okay, sir?" the man asked. "Yes," Daniel replied, though even he wasn't fully convinced. He left the building and got into his car, his thoughts racing as he drove. He didn't know exactly what he was doing. Didn't know why he felt the need to go. But something inside him refused to let him stay away. It didn't take long to reach the area she had mentioned before. It was quieter here, less polished, more real. He parked near the clinic and sat there for a moment, staring at the entrance. This is crossing a line, he thought. But then another voice inside him whispered, "You already crossed it the moment you couldn't let her walk away." He stepped out of the car. Inside the clinic, the atmosphere hadn't changed much. But for him, everything shifted the moment he saw her. Alina sat on a small chair, holding her daughter close, whispering softly to her as she rocked her gently. Her face looked different here. More vulnerable, more real. Not the composed, distant woman from the office. This was someone carrying everything alone. And then his gaze moved to the child. At first, it was just a glance. A simple look. But something about that look made him stop walking. Really stop. His chest tightened. The little girl turned her head slightly, her tired eyes opening just a bit. And in that moment, something inside him shattered. The resemblance. It wasn't small. It wasn't subtle. It was there, clear. Undeniable. The shape of her eyes. The curve of her lips. Even the way her brows moved slightly as she blinked. His breath caught. "No," he whispered, almost inaudibly. But he couldn't look away. His heart started pounding harder, louder, faster. A thought pushed its way into his mind. One he didn't want to accept. One he couldn't ignore. He took a slow step forward. Alina, her body stiffened instantly. Slowly, she turned her head. And when she saw him standing there, her face went pale. "Daniel," she breathed. Her voice carried shock. Fear, something deeper. He didn't respond immediately. His eyes were still on the child. "That girl," he said, his voice unsteady. "She looks like me." Alina's grip tightened protectively around Lily. "Daniel, please," she started, her voice trembling. But he shook his head slightly. "No," he said quietly. Don't do that." He stepped closer. His heart felt like it was breaking and racing at the same time. "Tell me the truth," he said. The room seemed to go silent. Even though people were still moving around, talking, existing, it felt like everything had faded away. Only this moment remained. Alina's eyes filled with tears. For 2 years she had held this secret, protected it, carried it alone. And now it stood between them, impossible to hide. She looked down at Lily, then back at him. Her voice, when it came out, was barely a whisper. Yes. The word hit him harder than anything else ever had. He stepped back slightly, like the ground beneath him had shifted. His daughter. He had a daughter. And he didn't even know. For 2 years. Her first cry. Her first steps. Her first words, all gone. His throat tightened. "How old?" he asked. 2, Alina replied softly. He closed his eyes briefly, pain cutting through him. 2 years. 2 years of a life he should have been part of. "What's her name?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "Lily." He repeated it slowly. "Lily." The little girl blinked again, looking at him with curiosity despite her weakness. "Mama who?" she murmured. Alina's heart broke at that question. She hesitated. But then, softly, she answered. "He's your father." The word hung in the air. Heavy, real. Daniel felt something inside him shift completely. "Father." He looked at Lily again, really looked this time, and something deep inside him responded. Not confusion, not doubt, something instinctive, something undeniable. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking slightly. "I didn't know." Alina shook her head gently. "It's not your fault." But he didn't agree. It felt like his fault, like he should have known, like he should have been there. They moved outside the room after a while, sitting in the waiting area. Lily had fallen asleep again, her breathing calmer now. Daniel sat beside them, his hands clasped together tightly. His mind was still trying to process everything. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked quietly. Alina looked down. "I didn't know how," she admitted. And then, slowly, she told him everything. The morning he left. The fear, the pregnancy, the struggle, the loneliness. Each word added weight to the silence between them. And each word made him realize just how much he had missed. Just how much she had endured alone. "You should have told me," he said, his voice heavy. "I didn't even know your full name," she replied softly. That stopped him. Because it was true. That night they had been strangers. Connected for a moment, then separated completely. "I tried to find you," he said. "I tried too," she replied. Silence settled again. But this time it felt different. Not empty. Full. Full of everything they hadn't said for 2 years. He looked at Lily again. Then back at Alina. "I want to be part of her life," he said quietly. Her heart skipped. "And yours," he added. She didn't respond immediately. Because this changed everything. Alina didn't answer him right away. His words settled between them slowly, like something fragile that could either grow into something real or shatter completely if handled the wrong way. She kept her eyes on Lily, gently adjusting the small blanket around her, as if buying herself time to think. "I want to be part of her life and yours." It sounded simple when he said it. But nothing about their situation was simple. Her fingers moved softly through Lily's hair as her thoughts raced. For 2 years she had lived with one truth: she was alone in this. Every decision, every sacrifice, every sleepless night had been hers to carry. And now suddenly, he was here, asking to step into a life he didn't even know existed until minutes ago. "Alina," Daniel said gently, sensing her silence wasn't rejection but hesitation. "Say something." She finally looked at him. There was no anger in her eyes. No blame. Just fear and exhaustion. "You don't understand what you're asking," she said quietly. "Then help me understand," he replied without hesitation. She took a slow breath, steadying herself. "For 2 years, I built my life around her," she said. "Everything I do, every choice I make, it's for Lily. I don't get to make mistakes. I don't get to take risks. Because if I fall, she falls with me." Daniel listened carefully, his expression serious. "I'm not just thinking about myself anymore," she continued. "So when you say you want to be part of her life, it's not something I can say yes to just because it sounds right." "I know," he said softly. "No," she shook her head slightly. "You don't. Not yet." That wasn't an insult, it was the truth. He leaned back slightly, taking her words in. "Then let me learn," he said. Her eyes searched his face, trying to understand if this was real or just a moment of emotion. "People say things when they're shocked," she said carefully. "When they feel guilty. When they want to fix something quickly." "I'm not trying to fix this quickly," he replied. "Then what are you trying to do?" He paused. Because the answer mattered. "I'm trying not to lose something important again," he said quietly. Her chest tightened at those words. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lily stirred slightly in her arms, her small hand moving weakly against Alina's chest. "Mama," she murmured. "I'm here," Alina whispered instantly, her voice soft and full of warmth. Daniel watched that moment closely. The way Lily relaxed immediately. The way Alina held her like nothing else in the world mattered. It did something to him. Something deep. "That should have been me too," he said softly, almost to himself. Alina heard him. But she didn't respond, because she didn't know how. After a few minutes, the nurse came out and confirmed that Lily's fever was going down and they could take her home soon. Relief settled in Alina's chest again. She stood carefully, adjusting Lily in her arms. "I should go," she said quietly. Daniel stood as well. "I'll come with you," he said immediately. She hesitated. "You don't have to." "I know," he replied. "I want to." There was something steady in his voice this time, not rushed. Not emotional, just certain. After a brief pause, she nodded. The ride back was quiet. Alina sat in the back seat with Lily resting against her, while Daniel drove. Neither of them spoke much, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy but calm. When they reached her apartment building, Daniel stepped out first, looking around briefly. It was modest, simple, far from the world he was used to. But he didn't comment. Instead, he walked beside her as they went upstairs. Inside, the apartment felt smaller with him in it. Not physically, but in presence. Everything about him stood out. The way he moved. The way he looked at things. The way he didn't belong yet didn't act like it mattered. "Put her here," he said gently, pointing to the bed. Alina carefully laid Lily down, covering her with a light blanket. Lily shifted slightly but didn't wake. For a moment, both of them just stood there watching her. "She looks peaceful," Daniel said quietly. "She always does when she's asleep," Alina replied. He nodded. Then his eyes moved around the room, the small kitchen, the worn couch, the neatly arranged items that showed effort, even if money was limited. "You did all this alone?" he asked. She crossed her arms slightly, not defensively but protectively. "Yes." He looked back at her. "I'm sorry." She shook her head again. "You've said that already. And I mean it every time," he replied. She didn't respond. Because apologies didn't change the past. They just acknowledged it. "I want to help," he said after a moment. "I know," she replied. "And I will," he added. That made her look at him again. There was no hesitation in his voice now. No confusion, just clarity. "You don't get to decide that alone," she said. "I'm not deciding alone," he replied calmly. "I'm telling you what I'm willing to do." "And what if I say no?" He paused. Then answered honestly. "Then I'll respect it," he said. "But I won't disappear." That answer surprised her. Most people would either push or walk away. But he was choosing something in between. "I don't want money," she said suddenly. "I didn't say you did. I don't want this to turn into something where you feel like you can solve everything with it." "I can't solve everything with money," he said quietly. "If I could, we wouldn't be standing here like this." That hit deeper than she expected. "Then what do you want?" she asked. He looked at Lily, then back at her. "A chance," he said simply. "To what?" "To be present." The word lingered. Present, not perfect, not controlling. Just there. She turned away slightly, walking toward the window. Her mind was spinning again. For 2 years, she had imagined this moment in different ways. Sometimes he rejected them. Sometimes he never showed up. Sometimes she stayed silent forever. But she had never imagined this version, where he wanted to stay. "I don't know if I can trust this," she admitted quietly. "That's fair," he replied. She turned back to him, surprised by how easily he accepted that. "You're not even going to argue?" "No," he said. "Trust isn't something you give because someone asks for it." That made sense. "And how do you expect to earn it?" she asked. "By showing up," he said. "Just like that." "Not just like that," he corrected gently. Consistently. She studied his face again, trying to see if there was doubt. But there wasn't. Only determination. "What if this becomes complicated?" she asked. "It already is," he replied. That made her almost smile. Almost. "And what about your life?" she continued. "Your company, your reputation, people will talk." "People always talk," he said. "That doesn't mean it won't affect you." "It might," he admitted. "But walking away would affect me more." That answer settled something inside her. Not completely, but enough to soften the walls she had built. "I'm not promising anything," she said finally. "I'm not asking for promises," he replied. "Then what are you asking for?" She looked at him carefully. He took a small step closer. "Just don't shut me out," he said. Her heart beat a little faster. Not from fear, but from something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope mixed with uncertainty. She looked at Lily again, then back at him. "Okay," she said quietly. Just one word, but it meant everything. His shoulders relaxed slightly, a breath he didn't realize he was holding finally leaving him. "Okay," he repeated. A small agreement, a small beginning. Nothing was fixed. Nothing was perfect. But something had changed. And for the first time since that night 2 years ago, they weren't strangers anymore. The next morning felt different in a way Alina couldn't fully explain. Nothing in her small apartment had changed. The same soft light slipped through the curtains, the same quiet filled the space, and Lily still slept curled up in her blanket with that innocent calm that always made everything feel a little less heavy. But inside Alina, Something had shifted. It wasn't relief. It wasn't fear. It was something in between. A quiet awareness that life had just taken a turn she could no longer ignore. She sat at the edge of the bed, watching Lily breathe softly. Her fingers moved gently through her daughter's hair, a habit she had built over time whenever she needed to think clearly. "Things won't stay the same anymore," she whispered. And for the first time, she wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. Her phone buzzed softly on the table beside her. She glanced at it. A message. From Daniel. "I hope she's feeling better this morning." Alina stared at the screen for a few seconds. Not intrusive. Not demanding. Just present. Exactly what he said he would be. She typed a reply slowly. "Her fever is down. She's sleeping." A few seconds passed. Then another message came. "That's good. Let me know if she needs anything." She didn't reply immediately. Because that word again, anything. It sounded generous. But it also felt dangerous. Because accepting anything meant opening a door she had kept closed for 2 years. Still, she didn't ignore him. "Thank you," she typed. Short, careful, controlled. She put the phone down and stood up, taking a deep breath. Today she had to go back to work. And now everything would feel different. Because now he knew. After getting ready and making sure Lily was comfortable, she left her with Mrs. Carter again. The older woman gave her a knowing look, as if she could sense something had changed, but she didn't ask questions. "Everything all right?" Mrs. Carter asked gently. Alina forced a small smile. Yes. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. The ride to work felt longer than usual. Her mind replayed yesterday again and again. His face when he realized. His voice when he said he wanted to be part of their lives. The way he looked at Lily, not like a stranger, but like something in him recognized her instantly. When she reached the building, her steps slowed slightly. This place no longer felt like just a workplace. It felt personal now. Too personal. She entered, greeted the receptionist, and made her way to the elevator. As the doors closed, her reflection stared back at her again. "You said yes," she murmured softly. Not a full yes, but not a no either. And that mattered. When she stepped onto her floor, everything looked the same. But the feeling wasn't. She walked to her desk, placed her bag down, and turned on the computer. Her hands moved automatically, organizing tasks, reviewing schedules, trying to focus on work. But it didn't take long. Mia. She froze for a split second, then turned. Daniel stood at his office door, not distant, not formal, just there. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning, sir," she replied, her tone slipping back into professionalism. Something flickered in his expression at the word sir, but he didn't push it. "Can you come in for a moment?" he asked. She nodded and followed him inside. The office felt different now, not intimidating, but charged. He closed the door gently behind her, then walked back to his desk. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he broke the silence. "How is she?" he asked. "Better," Alina replied. "The fever went down." A small relief passed through his face. "That's good." Another pause, but this one wasn't awkward. It was careful, measured. "I meant what I said yesterday," he added. She looked at him. "I know. I'm not going to rush you," he continued. "And I'm not going to push you into anything you're not ready for." She crossed her arms lightly, not defensive, just grounding herself. "Then what happens now?" she asked. He leaned slightly against his desk. "Now we take it step by step." "And what does that mean exactly?" "It means," he said calmly, "I don't suddenly become a stranger again. And I don't suddenly act like I've been here the whole time." That made sense. "And Lily?" she asked. His expression softened instantly at her name. "I'd like to see her," he said honestly. Her heart tightened slightly. "That's not something I can decide quickly," she replied. "I know. But I'm not going to pretend I don't want to," he finished. She looked down for a moment, thinking. "Let's start with something small," she said finally. He waited. "You can come by later this week," she continued. "Just for a short time." His chest lifted, not excitement, but something close. "Okay," he said. One word. But it carried weight. "Just don't expect too much," she added quickly. "I won't," he replied. Another silence. Then she straightened slightly. Is there anything work-related you needed? She asked, pulling the conversation back to safer ground. A faint smile touched his lips. You're good at that, he said. Ain't what? Creating distance when things get close. Her expression didn't change. Professional boundaries, she corrected. Right, he nodded. Then he handed her a file. Let's focus on that for now. She took it and turned to leave. But just before she reached the door, Alina, she stopped. Not turning this time. Yes, I'm not going anywhere, he said quietly. Her fingers tightened slightly on the file. I heard you the first time, she replied, and then she walked out. The day moved on, but something had changed in the way he looked at her, and in the way she felt his presence. It wasn't just boss and employee anymore. It was something deeper. Something neither of them fully understood yet. Later that afternoon, as she was organizing documents, her phone buzzed again. A message from Daniel. I'll come by at 6, if that's okay. She stared at the screen. Her heart beat slightly faster. This was happening, slowly. But surely, she typed back, okay. Just like that, no long message, no overthinking. But the meaning behind it was big, because tonight, he would see Lily again. Not as a stranger in a clinic, but as her father, and that moment would change everything again. At exactly 6 in the evening, there was a soft knock on the door. Alina had been expecting it. Yet her heart still jumped slightly when the sound broke the quiet of her apartment. Lily sat on the floor nearby, playing with a small toy car, her laughter light and unaware of the weight that moment carried. For a second, Alina didn't move. She just stood there watching her daughter as if trying to gather strength from her innocence. Then the knock came again. Gentle, patient, just like him. She walked to the door slowly and opened it. Daniel stood there, dressed simply this time. No sharp suit, no polished corporate look. Just a plain shirt and jeans. In his hand was a small bag. He looked different. Not less, just more real. Hi, he said softly. Hi, she replied. For a brief second, they just looked at each other. Then she stepped aside. Come in. He walked in quietly, his eyes immediately searching the room until they found Lily. She was still playing, unaware. He froze slightly. This time, it wasn't shock. It was something deeper. Something that settled in his chest like it had always belonged there. That's her, he asked quietly. Alina nodded. Yes. Lily looked up then, noticing someone new. Her small brows furrowed slightly, curiosity replacing distraction. She stood up slowly, holding her toy. Ooh, she asked, looking at Alina. Alina walked over and knelt beside her. Remember I told you about someone important? She said gently. Lily nodded faintly. Alina glanced at Daniel for a second, then back at her daughter. This is him. Lily looked at Daniel again. Her eyes studied him carefully. Children didn't overthink. They just felt. And for some reason, she didn't look scared. Just curious. Daniel crouched down slowly, making sure he wasn't towering over her. Hi, Lily, he said softly. She blinked. You know my name. He smiled a little. I just learned it, he admitted. She stepped a little closer. Why are you here? She asked. Alina's heart tightened at that question. Daniel didn't rush his answer. Because I wanted to see you, he said honestly. Lily tilted her head slightly. Then, without warning, she held out her toy car. Play. Alina's breath caught. Daniel looked at the toy, then back at her. A small smile formed on his lips. Okay, he said. He sat on the floor, crossing his legs, and gently took the toy. Lily sat in front of him, completely at ease now. Alina watched from a short distance. Her chest felt tight, but not from fear, from something unfamiliar. Something she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. Daniel pushed the toy car slowly across the floor. Again. He did it again. And again. Each time, her laughter grew louder. And each time, something inside him softened more. This wasn't business. This wasn't obligation. This was real. After a while, Lily crawled closer to him, her small hand touching his arm without hesitation. Why you look like me? She asked suddenly. The room went quiet. Alina froze. Daniel's movement stopped for a second. Then he looked at her gently. Maybe, because we're connected, he said. Lily didn't fully understand, but she nodded anyway. Okay, simple, easy. Children didn't need complicated answers. They just needed honesty they could feel. Alina exhaled slowly. Tension she didn't realize she was holding easing just a little. As the evening went on, Daniel stayed. Not too long, just enough. He didn't push boundaries, didn't ask heavy questions. He just existed in that space. And slowly, that space started to adjust to him. At one point, Lily climbed into his lap without asking. It happened so naturally that even Alina didn't react immediately. Daniel, however, felt it deeply, her small weight, her warmth. The way she leaned against him like it was normal, like it made sense. His hand hesitated for a second before gently resting on her back. Careful, respectful, but present. Alina watched that moment closely, and something inside her shifted again. Because this was what she had been afraid of, and at the same time, what she never knew she needed. When it was time for Lily to sleep, Alina picked her up gently. "Say goodnight," she whispered. Lily rubbed her eyes. "Night," she murmured, looking at Daniel. He smiled softly. "Good night, Lily." She leaned slightly toward him, and without thinking he leaned in too. A small kiss on her forehead, soft, natural. Right. Alina felt her throat tighten. She turned away slightly and carried Lily to bed. When she came back, the room felt quieter. Different. Daniel stood near the window, his hands in his pockets. He looked out for a moment. To her. "Thank you," he said. "For what? For letting me be here?" She crossed her arms lightly. "It's not permanent," she said. "I know. But it's a start," he added. She didn't argue, because that part was true. They stood in silence for a moment. Then he spoke again. "I don't want to rush this," he said. "You've said that. I mean it more now." She raised an eyebrow slightly. "What changed?" He looked toward the room where Lily was sleeping. "Seeing her," he said simply. That answer was enough. "I don't expect you to trust me overnight," he continued. "But I want you to know something." She waited. "I'm not doing this out of guilt." Her expression softened slightly. "Then why?" He looked at her directly. "Because I want to be here." There was no hesitation, no doubt, just truth. She held his gaze for a second longer than usual, then looked away. "That's going to take time to believe," she said quietly. "I have time," he replied. Another silence, but this one felt lighter. He checked the time and stepped back slightly. She nodded. "Okay." He walked toward the door, then paused. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." A small agreement again. He opened the door, then looked back at her one last time. "Good night, Alina." "Good night." And then he left. The door closed softly behind him. Alina stood there for a moment, staring at it. Her heart was calm, not racing, not heavy, just steady. She walked to Lily's room and looked at her sleeping peacefully. Then whispered softly, "Maybe this won't be as hard as I thought," but deep inside she knew. This was only the beginning. The following days did not move like a dream. They moved slowly, carefully, with small steps that mattered more than big promises. Daniel came every evening, sometimes with food, sometimes with medicine, sometimes with nothing except time. He learned that Lily hated carrots, loved soft bread, and could not sleep unless Alina sang the same little song twice. He listened more than he spoke. He did not enter like a rich man coming to rescue them. He entered like a man trying to earn a place he should have protected from the very beginning, with humble patience every single night. At first, Alina watched him with guarded eyes. She noticed everything. How he lowered his voice when Lily slept. How he washed his hands before touching her toys. How he asked before opening cupboards, before buying anything, before making plans. Those small details reached her heart, because no one had ever treated her struggle with such respect. Still, she kept a line between them. She accepted help for Lily, but not gifts for herself. She allowed conversation, but not comfort. She allowed him near their life, but not too close to the wounded places inside her wounded heart just yet. Daniel understood, or at least he tried to. There were moments when the guilt became heavy enough to show on his face, especially when Lily called him daddy without knowing how much that word cost him. He would smile for her, but later, when she ran away to play, his eyes would grow quiet. Alina saw it. She saw the regret he carried, and slowly she stopped hating herself for hiding the truth. He had not abandoned them by choice. Life had broken the bridge before either of them knew, how badly they needed it to survive the crossing together. One Friday evening, Daniel asked Alina and Lily to visit a quiet garden outside the city. Alina almost refused because everything beautiful still made her suspicious, but Lily clapped when she heard flowers, and that decided it. They arrived near sunset. The sky was gold, the air was gentle, and the garden smelled of wet grass. Daniel carried Lily on his shoulders while she laughed and held his hair like reins. Alina walked beside them, smiling before she realized it. For the first time, the picture did not feel borrowed. It felt possible, almost safe, almost theirs after so long. But every gentle moment had a shadow waiting behind it. The shadow came the next Monday, when office gossip finally found its teeth. Someone had seen Daniel leaving Alina's apartment building. Someone else had noticed how often he checked on her. By lunch, whispers moved through the floor like smoke. She heard her name beside words like trap, baby money, and lucky. Her face burned, but she kept typing. She had survived worse than whispers. Still, every cruel sentence opened an old fear. Maybe this was why she had stayed silent. Maybe love always asked women to pay first alone. Daniel heard the gossip by afternoon. He did not explode, but his silence became colder than anger. He called the senior staff into the conference room, and Alina stood outside, heart racing. Through the glass, she saw him speak with a calm that frightened everyone more than shouting would have. When the door opened, faces came out pale and lowered. Later, he sent a company-wide message about respect, privacy, and consequences. He did not mention her name. He did not need to. For once, power stood in front of her, not above her or against her when it mattered most. That evening, she found him waiting near her desk after everyone had gone. She expected an apology for the gossip, but instead he looked at her with tired honesty and said, "I cannot protect you from every mouth, but I can make sure you never stand alone before them." Alina wanted to say something strong. She wanted to keep her wall steady. Instead, her eyes filled, not because she was weak, but because being defended felt unfamiliar. She had fought so long that kindness almost felt like danger. Daniel did not move closer. He simply waited until she breathed again. "I am afraid," she finally whispered. "Not of you, exactly. Of believing and then losing." Daniel nodded, and there was pain in that nod because he understood the cost of her words. "Then believe slowly," he said. "Believe in small pieces. Believe when I come tomorrow. Believe when I keep coming next week. Believe when Lily needs me and I answer. Believe when things are ugly, not only when they are easy." Alina looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time she allowed herself to see not the billionaire, not the boss, but the man beneath everything. Weeks passed, and the story changed shape. Daniel did not hide Lily, but he did not parade her either. He met her gently, privately, respectfully, giving Alina the room to guide every step. He paid medical bills after asking. He opened an education account after explaining. He bought Lily a little yellow raincoat because she loved puddles, and Alina laughed when Lily refused to take it off indoors. Their life was still simple, but it was no longer desperate. The difference was not luxury. The difference was breathing without counting every coin before hope could be invited inside again. Then came the hardest conversation, not in a clinic, office, or garden, but in Alina's kitchen while Lily slept. Daniel stood near the counter, nervous in a way she had never seen. "My mother wants to meet you," he said. Alina's stomach tightened. Rich families had rules, and she feared becoming the mistake they smiled at politely before pushing away. "Does she know everything?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "And she knows I should have known sooner." Alina looked down at her hands. "What if she thinks I trapped you?" Daniel answered softly, "Then she will be wrong about us." The meeting happened on a quiet Sunday. Daniel's mother, Evelyn Hayes, arrived without diamonds, guards, or cold eyes. She was elegant, yes, but her first look went to Lily, who was hiding behind Alina's skirt. Evelyn crouched slowly and offered a soft smile. "Hello, little one." Lily stared, suspicious for 3 seconds, then asked if she liked cookies. Evelyn laughed, and something in the room relaxed. Later, she took Alina's hands and said, "You raised my granddaughter with courage. I will never shame you for surviving what you should not have carried alone for one more painful silent day again." Alina cried after that. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with the quiet surrender of someone who had been strong too long. Evelyn held her, Daniel looked away to give her dignity, and Lily climbed into the middle of them with a cookie in each hand. It was messy, awkward, beautiful, and human. No one promised that pain had disappeared. No one pretended 2 lost years could be replaced. But something better than pretending happened. They honored the loss, then chose not to let it own the future. Alina felt her fear loosen, not vanish, just loosen enough to breathe freely. Months later, the company held a charity event for single parents and struggling families. Alina stood backstage, watching Daniel speak to a hall full of people who once measured success only by money. He spoke about responsibility, absence, second chances, and the quiet strength of women who raise children without applause. He never turned her pain into a show. He never used Lily as proof of goodness. He simply spoke truth. When he finished, the room stood clapping. But Alina did not hear the applause. She heard only one sentence he had said with his whole humbled heart there tonight. The people we fail are not always lost forever, but if they return, we must meet them with changed hands. Alina stood there with tears in her eyes, because she knew those words were not for the crowd. They were for her, for Lily, for the night that began with tenderness and ended with absence, for the years that followed, for every unanswered question. When Daniel came backstage, he did not ask if she was proud. He only looked nervous again, like her opinion still mattered more than the whole room's applause to him in that trembling moment right then. She stepped closer and touched his hand. That small touch carried more than a kiss would have. It told him she was still there. It told him the bridge was holding. His fingers closed around hers carefully, almost reverently. "Come with me," she whispered. "Lily wants to show you something." They found their daughter in a side room, wearing a paper crown she had made with Evelyn. Across the front, in uneven letters, were 3 words: Mama, Daddy, Me. Daniel stared at it until his eyes shone. Lily lifted her arms proudly. "Family," she announced like it was final. That night, after Lily fell asleep between them on the couch, Alina and Daniel sat in the dim room without speaking. The television played softly, ignored. Outside, rain touched the window in light taps. Daniel looked at Alina, then at Lily, then back again. "I love you," he said quietly. He did not say it like a demand. He said it like a truth he was finally brave enough to place in the open. Alina's heart trembled. She had imagined hearing those words before, but never like this, with proof standing behind them in every patient, ordinary moment now too. She looked down at Lily's sleeping face, then at the man who had returned not perfectly, but honestly. "I love you too," she whispered. The words scared her even as they healed her. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, he looked like a man forgiven by something greater than romance. He did not pull her into a dramatic embrace. He only leaned his forehead against hers and breathed. That was enough. Sometimes love did not need fireworks. Sometimes it needed quiet, a sleeping child, and 2 people choosing the truth again without running away. A year later, Alina walked into the same glass building where her fear had once almost swallowed her. This time she was not there begging for a chance. She was leading a foundation meeting for young mothers who needed jobs, childcare, and legal support. Daniel watched from the back, holding Lily, who kept whispering too loudly that Mama looked beautiful. Alina smiled through her speech. She told the women that shame was not a home, silence was not safety, and survival was not the end of their story. The room listened because she had lived every word before speaking today. When it ended, Lily ran to her, Daniel followed, and Alina opened her arms to both. She had come for a job interview and found the man from her past, but the real miracle was not his money. It was truth, courage, and the family they built from what once nearly broke them and made them whole again.